Manny Pacquiao says that Errol Spence is slower than Keith Thurman. In fact, he said Errol Spence is too slow. But he said that a fight between him and the Truth would be a good one. Well, Manny Pacquiao, as we all know, is a speed merchant. He's known for speed. He's been one of the fastest fighters in boxing for the past few decades. And so a puncher sees the world through a puncher's eyes. When they look at a lot of their rivals who can't punch or can't punch the way they can, they're often a bit dismissive. David Haye is an example of this. Even now, when he's analyzing heavyweights, if a guy doesn't really have, A-grade punching power, he can be a bit dismissive of them. You see, because his mentality is that of a puncher. You must be able to hurt the guy. You must be able to put damage on him, because that's how David Haye got his success, with that type of mentality, training like a puncher, performing in the ring as a puncher. Sometimes these guys don't understand that that isn't the only way to skin a cat. You can be a heavyweight who isn't a puncher. Even in an era of big punches, you can be a guy who isn't a puncher and still have success against these guys. But again, David Haye struggles to see it that way. He sees things through a puncher's eyes. Manny Pacquiao, perhaps, sees things through a speedster's eyes because he's a fast fighter. Maybe he looks at other fighters who are not particularly fast and thinks, this guy ain't got it. He's not fast enough. Keith Thurman, not as fast as Manny Pacquiao, but definitely fast, okay, relatively speaking. Although the way he fought in that Pacquiao fight, and at the time I was very critical of Keith Thurman's performance from a strategic point of view. I thought it was absolute madness. I thought it was counterintuitive to push forward and try and back Manny Pacquiao up. I thought, you know what, if he's fighting an old guy like Pacquiao who's got quick hands, but his feet are not what they used to be. Keith Thurman, who always had great movement and displayed it in many of his biggest fights, he needs to use that against Pacquiao. I mean, Mayweather showed what can be done against Pacquiao if you've got some movement. I know Keith Thurman is not as slick as Mayweather, but still, the blueprint was there against this older version of Pacquiao, who's a bit slower on his feet. But Thurman instead chose to play into Pacquiao's hands and actually go forward against him and do most of the work. Most of the, how can I explain it? I say most of the work like he didn't outwork Pacquiao. But what I'm saying is he played into Pacquiao's hands. Pacquiao didn't want to have to go looking for Thurman. That takes energy, that takes time, that takes concentration. He didn't want to have to do that. Thurman did it for him. Thurman came to him. So Pacquiao didn't have to make the effort to go hunt his opponent down. You see it. So, yeah, I was disappointed in Thurman's performance, but apparently there were some injuries and there were some things that played into Keith Thurman fighting that way. And who knows, maybe that's true. But that version of Keith Thurman, I don't think was the best version we've seen that lost to Pacquiao. But Pacquiao still thinks that version of Thurman was fast. Okay? I think Errol Spence has deceptive speed. So Pacquiao's saying he's not quick. I think if they get in the ring, Pacquiao might realize he's a bit quicker than he thought he was. He's certainly not as quick as Pacquiao. Don't misconstrue what I'm saying at all. Pacquiao's got much faster hands than Errol Spence. And at his best, he had much faster feet as well. But yeah, Errol Spence doesn't look spectacularly fast. But I don't know. I think he's one of those fighters who can be a bit deceptive. And when you're in the ring against him, the shots do come at you a bit quicker than you expected and are a bit more surprising than you would have thought. So, and also, I wouldn't get too caught up on the fact that Errol Spence isn't as fast as Keith Thurman, because Errol Spence has elements to his game that Keith Thurman doesn't have. For me, Errol Spence is a much better technical fighter than Keith Thurman. Keith Thurman will often throw wide looping shots, leave himself off balance and what have you. I'm not saying he's terrible technically, Keith, but he does make a lot of technical errors, a lot of mistakes in there. Errol Spence is a more cool, calm type of character. He can punch too. In fact, does he punch harder than Thurman? I mean, I don't know. You'd have to ask Sean Porter. But he can punch too, but he's more calculated. He's more in control of what he's doing. He's more rangy than Keith Thurman. So, yeah, if Pacquiao is thinking that this fight would be more winnable for him than the Thurman fight, I beg to differ. Now, there are some people who say that Errol Spence is not the same since coming back from the car crash, even though he did beat Danny Garcia and beat him well. Errol Spence kind of admitted this himself, that he wasn't 100% in that fight, but he put it more down to ring rust. But there were others saying, no, Danny Garcia never really pushed Errol Spence in that fight, and therefore he never exposed the fact that Spence is not quite what he was before the crash. You have to get somebody to put pressure on Spence to bring that out, to expose that, whereas Garcia didn't do it. So that remains to be seen. It's certainly possible. But as I said in my post-fight video, the recovery that Spence has made is far beyond what I would have expected. Even despite the fact that Danny Garcia didn't really push him in the fight, to be able to do what he did was incredible to me. So he really is not only the truth, but the miracle man, to take a name off Danny Jacobs. And Pacquiao, he's had these long periods of inactivity. So it's not like he is in his prime either. It's not like he's at his absolute zenith either. So it kind of balances when it comes to what Errol Spence has been through. Personally, I'll be picking Errol Spence in the fight against Manny Pacquiao. But then again, I picked Keith Thurman against Manny Pacquiao. So maybe I'm underestimating Pacquiao. But to bring it back to the original topic of this video, the speed. I think if you can keep a guy at the end of a jab and use your height and reach effectively, you can nullify his speed. That's something that Keith Thurman didn't do against Pacquiao. Doesn't have the height and reach of Errol Spence. But that's something I have to imagine Errol Spence will try to do. He'll try to keep Pacquiao, or at least I think he should, try to keep Pacquiao at the end of his punches, at the end of his southpaw jab. Obviously, both guys are southpaws. And make Pacquiao have to work for his openings, work for his opportunities. If this was a prime Manny Pacquiao, it will be a very different fight. Manny Pacquiao had such good movement. His feet were so fast. He could dart in and out. He could mess with your balance, mess with the range, and punish you. But this is not a prime Pacquiao at all. Still has quick hands, but he isn't perpetual motion anymore. He doesn't work constantly all the way through a fight. He can't move the way he used to be able to move. This is a guy who is more of a wily vet now in Pacquiao. He does have fast hands, but in short bursts, paces himself, and so on. And obviously he's supposed to at his age. But what I'm saying is it doesn't make him as formidable as he was when he was younger. So anyway, let me know what you guys think about this in the comments below.